Hey there. For this core activation workout, we're going to start by tucking the pelvis up and pushing the ribs down, trying to lengthen through the spine. And then we're going to begin by going to hands and knees, opening up those fingertips, and going into cat-cow pose. So if you're not familiar with this from yoga, think about pushing through your upper back towards the ceiling as you tuck your chin and exhale. And then inhale, pull your palms as if they're coming back towards your knees while you open up your chest and roll the shoulders down. You move in sync with your breath, and I recommend doing this 5 to 10 times just to help your spine loosen up. Notice if there's any spots that might be a little tight or tender that you can be mindful of while we're doing core work. And then we're going to come down to the ground, and we're going to actually just start to turn on your abs. So you'll want to drive the ribs down towards the hips and drive the hips up towards the ribs so you're getting that nice engagement. If you pat your stomach, you should feel some firm muscle engaging. And then you're going to make sure the back of the neck's nice and long. And what we're going to do is inhale, relax, open, exhale, push the ribs down. So we're not even crunching here. We're just starting to activate the core. Let's do this about 5 or 10 times, thinking about pushing and pulling the belly button down towards your spine or towards the floor as you exhale. Inhale, just loosen it up. And if it doesn't feel like much, really focus on that exhale being nice and strong, and you should feel your core muscles start to engage. And then we're going to transition into glute bridges to wake up the posterior chain. So roll those shoulders back into the mat, pulling them away from the ears, drive the heels into the ground, and squeeze your hips up towards the ceiling. As you come down, think about rolling through your upper back, mid back, low back, and pelvis, almost ironing out your spine, pulling your hips away from you towards the wall in front of you, or thinking about pulling your knees forward on the way down. You'll want to exhale into your heels on the way up, inhale to pull down. And again, we're going to do about 5 to 10 of these. How many you do is really relative to where you're at in your fitness journey. And if you want to be slow and mindful, or if you're wanting to just kind of get into things and use this as a faster paced warm up. This first set, I recommend going a little bit slower and articulating the full movement really steady. You can always speed up next time. So we're going to go back to hands and knees, go back to that cat-cow, and you may notice it's a little bit easier this time. Or you might notice that you're able to get deeper into each stretch. When we do movements like these in 2 or more rounds, you can use that first round as kind of like a warm-up and taking your time and really being mindful of each motion. And the second round, you can get deeper in the stretch, you can go a little faster, you can do more reps, but basically it's kind of like the first really full active option. And so that way, if you're feeling stiff, don't feel like you have to go all out at the beginning. And so the second round is a good time to challenge yourself. So once we're done with those cat-cows, we're going to go back down to our back and activate the core again. This time I'm going to show you how to do it with your legs straight on the ground. So you could have your feet by your butt, or you can just have legs straight. Both are good, although if you tend to have that dip or space in your low back, you may want to have your feet up by your glutes just because it helps lengthen the back. But we're going to go back to driving the ribs down, driving the hips up, using the inhale to relax. Exhale, squeeze the ribs down. And as you're doing that, you'll pull belly button towards the floor. So you're trying to brace and flatten your tummy by squeezing it in with your exhales. Use your breath to power that movement. And then when you're done with those, you can stretch it out if you'd like. And then we're going to move up into glute bridges one more time. So with these glute bridges, now that you're warmed up, think about pushing really hard through your heels. Squeeze your hips as high as you can go without causing any kind of pain or stress in the low back. If you feel tension in the low back, you can think about driving your heels back towards your butt, like pulling them almost, but they're not going to move. You're just kind of activating them and pulling them, drawing a circle forward on the way down and then kind of back and around on the way up. When you're done with these glute bridges, you can do a windshield wiper stretch to stretch out your hips, or if you had any low back tension, this really helps as well. And then we're going to move on to our next group of things. The next group is going to be a little more intense. So use this first group as kind of like a setup and engagement. Next group, we are going to start to feel the burn a little bit. So you're going to come back to hands and knees. And then make sure you've got lots of support here. We are going to do bird dogs. So with bird dogs, you can do them a few different ways. I'm showing the full extension of the movement. You're reaching forward like you're shaking someone's hand, and then the opposite foot pushes out with the heel leading away from you, and then you switch sides. So that's a regular bird dog. You can slow it down by reaching forward first and then reaching your foot out, or you can even pop your foot out and touch the ground. And that way you have a lot more support for your balance. If you find yourself getting really wobbly, then this might be a good option for you. Or just go slower. The slower you go, the more control you're gonna have. And then if you feel like going a little extra, you can always reach forward and then drive the elbow towards the knee. It's sort of like an upside down crunch before you replace it back on the ground and switch sides. This is going to be a little bit more of a level up in this movement. So if you're feeling like these movements are really easy for you, go ahead and try this out. It's going to challenge your balance a little bit more. And then we were done with about 5 to 10 on each side. We're gonna go back to the ground, this time on our side. So you're gonna have your elbows stacked underneath your shoulder, and we're gonna do a side plank variation. So you can do this with one knee on the ground. You could also have your top foot on the ground and shift up, almost like a side glute bridge, or you can put your feet together and squeeze your legs together and lift the hips off the ground. So wherever you're gonna be, we're gonna take that hand and reach it underneath to tuck. You're going to feel this in the front side of your abs and your obliques, and then you're going to reach up towards the sky to get a nice big stretch. Try to stack your shoulders. So you're keeping the elbow, shoulder, and then the upper shoulder kind of all in the straight line. And feel free to come down in between reps and rest if you need to do that. Once you've done 5 to 10 on that side, we're going to go around to the other side. I'm going to show you a different variation. And then make sure again that your shoulders, elbows are stacked. You have lots of support here. Find your balance, make sure you're breathing, and then you're going to add that hand reaching up towards the sky, and we're going to do those tucks. Again, 5 to 10, do what feels challenging but accessible to you. So push yourself just a little bit, even if that's just 3 reps. And if this feels easy for you, I want you to do at least 10. Make sure you inhale as you reach up, exhale, reach down, and tuck. You're doing great. Almost done. Once you're done 5 to 10 of those, we're going to come back down towards the ground and transition to our next movement. So you're going to lie back on your back. And once again, we're going to tuck the pelvis up towards the ribs, drive the ribs down towards the hips. We're making sure everything's really activated and low back is nice and flat. We're going to reach those fingertips up, pull the knees in towards the chest. And for these dead bugs, we're going to keep that back pushing into the ground the entire time. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Here's one option. You'll extend your heel out, bring it back in, and then switch sides. You'll inhale to push the foot out. Exhale, pull the knee back in. Inhale, push the foot out. Exhale, pull the knee back in. Hands stay still. And you don't want to go down too low, so low that your back comes off the ground. Another option is to reach those fingers up overhead as you inhale the foot out. So this is the next level. It's a little more complicated. So if this feels like too much, don't worry about it. But definitely work on that breath. Inhale the foot out, exhale the foot back in. And you can also do this with 2 feet. This is the next level up. So if you're challenging yourself today, make sure the back is pushing into the ground as you inhale those heels out. They do not have to go all the way down to the ground. You can push them out like a 45 degrees, or you could even push them up towards the ceiling. Once you're done with that, stretch out that low back, take a nice little break. We're gonna come over to hands and knees. Once again, we're stretching it out. And we've got those bird dogs. So we're going back to the bird dogs, nice and steady. Think about inhaling to extend and reach. Exhale, put it back. It's almost like the upside down version of those dead bugs. We're just working slightly different muscles. And once again, if your balance is challenging you, you can pop the toes out and push them on the ground. Whatever you're doing, be slow, mindful. Make sure you're in control and try not to get super wobbly. If you're getting wobbly, just go slower. Also, if you notice your back start to dip, you can lift your belly button away from the ground. And if you want to level this up, just reach forward and do those little baby crunches by pulling the knee in. Try to drive the elbow to the knee. You don't even have to touch it, just squeeze it towards it, and you'll feel that lift in the low back. Okay, now we're going back to the side for those side plank variations. So find your spot, however you wanted to get there, and then open it up. Exhale, squeeze and tuck. Reach back underneath you like you're trying to reach behind you. And play around with how you want to make this challenging for yourself. Feel free to rest by bringing the hips down to the ground in between reps if needed. Although actually that's more work. It's going to take a lot more effort, but it helps if your shoulder or your elbow is not feeling super strong. You can still do some good reps that way. Once you've done 5 or 10, you're going to go to the other side. Again, here's a different variation for you. With this one, you push hard through the heel on that standing leg. And the other foot's just pushing straight out away from you. So this is a nice hip opener actually. And then it's a little less pressure on the elbow. So if you have elbow or shoulder pain, this option's probably going to be the most comfortable for you. Feel free to do this up on your hand as well, although I find that to be a little bit more challenging. Make sure you're breathing. Inhale to reach, exhale to tuck. When you're done with those, we go back to the ground for some more dead bugs. Last time here. So again, you want to really tuck the ribs down, pull the pelvis up, push that back into the ground. Super, super important. Think about that first over anything else, and all the other movements are secondary. So here I am showing the single leg with the double arm reach overhead. So many variations on dead bugs. So I'm going to show a few here. You can do this push straight up towards the ceiling. This is really great if you have tight hamstrings and your low back likes to pull away from the ground. If you want to level up, just push a little further out towards the corner of the room. And I'm going to show how you can continue to progress this. If you're getting stronger and stronger, your feet can go further down. Think about pushing through the feet though. We're not doing bicycles. So we're just really pushing straight out and pulling straight in. And as long as your back is flat on the ground, you can go all the way down to the ground. You can stretch out your low back and hips if you need to by doing windshield wipers. And now we've gone to our more challenging core moves. So feel free to stop here if you need to. And if you want to keep going, you're going to roll the shoulder blades back. We're going to lift up into a glute bridge and do a march. There's a couple of ways we can do this. We can lift the heel up and then squeeze the hips off the ground, return the hips to the ground, and then switch the legs. Or you can come up into a glute bridge and then keep one foot on the ground while you march, and then switch legs while you keep your butt off the ground. This one's a little more challenging. This one also could potentially put pressure on your low back. So if this doesn't feel good to you, go back to that switching one that I mentioned earlier, and I'll demonstrate that in the next round. So you're going to really push through the heels, keep your butt pushing forward and up. Think about lengthening through your low back by pulling it away from you towards your feet, and roll the shoulders down away from the ears. When you're done about 5 or 10 of these, you're going to roll down. You can stretch out your hips by doing windshield wipers, or go ahead and come and get ready for our next thing, which is going to be a bow pose. So this is really challenging static hold. You're going to sit up really tall through the spine, roll the shoulders away from the ears, and then we're going to walk the feet just slightly away. This is going to really challenge your core muscles, so feel free to reach forward as a counterweight and be mindful of your low back, pulling that spine nice and tall. So a few options here. You can push your feet further forward. You can lean back further. You can also pull the knees in and lift your feet off the ground, either holding onto your legs or letting go. So I'm going to show a few different options here. Steady yourself before you reach forward again. And you can keep those knees bent and pulled in tight, focusing on your balance, or you can extend the feet further away, focusing on the core strength. You can reach up, you can reach sideways, and you can even extend your legs, which is really challenging as I'm showing here. This one's a little bit tricky for me. See how long you can hold those challenging poses, and then roll back and rest. Feel free to shake it out with the windshield wiper stretch. It's a really good stretch with pretty much regardless of whatever core move you're doing. And then we're going to go back into our last movement. Push your hands underneath your hips, and then we're going to bring those knees up. Feet are going to push into the sky. So we're going to do heels to heavens. I like flexing the feet, pushing through those heels to get the best stretch here in the hamstrings. And then what we're going to do is try to squeeze your butt off the ground by pushing your heels into the sky. It's really easy to pull those knees back towards your face. Try not to do that so much. Think about pushing those heels straight up or going mostly straight up. And you'll do this with exhaling, squeezing your butt as hard as you can. And then your hands kind of soften the landing so your back and your hips don't feel super intense. Cool. Great job. Okay, so we're going to go back to those glute bridge marches. You can stretch out if you need to. And then make sure you're checking with those shoulders. They're still supporting you. I'm going to show you the full march variation here. So you're going to pull one knee up, do the glute bridge march, roll all the way down, and then switch your feet. This one's a perfect option if your back is starting to get tired, or if you really want to isolate your glutes and worry more about the glutes and the hamstrings, or get some more glute activation, you probably will feel it more this way. Again, there's no necessarily right way to do it. It's more like, what do you want to focus on, or what feels best for your body? So make sure you're listening and opt for the choice that feels good for you. Again, we're going to do about 5 to 10 on each side and then stretch it out. And then we'll go into that bow pose one more time. So you're going to roll it up, find your balance. I like to pull the knees in the chest and make sure the back's nice and relaxed and long. And then play around with different options here, lifting the feet, extending the feet as far away from you as you feel comfortable with, reaching forward for a counterweight. Check in with the neck and make sure that it's not tight. And then we're going to continue to breathe while you challenge yourself. Play around with one foot at a time, lifting up if you want, and then the other, and then try both. See if you can hold it. And again, the goal is to play here. So have fun with it. And when you're done, we're going to roll back to the ground for one last set of heels to heavens. So play around with a different hand placement if you'd like. Make sure your hips feel supported. And then we're going to exhale, squeeze those heels into the sky. Try to squeeze your butt. So I'm rocking back a little bit here, but the goal is to push up, up, up as much as you can. A little bit of rocking is pretty inevitable, but see if you can limit that. When you're done, you're going to pull those knees into your chest. And we're going to stretch it out because a lot of times with intense core work, it's easy to rely on shoulders, neck, hips, low back. So we're going to make sure that we loosen those up in case those got tight. Pull the knee into the chest, and then you can pull it across your body. Really loosen up the side of your hip. As you do this, you want to inhale and exhale deeply. Go ahead and switch legs. We're just doing a quick stretch here. Pull it in, pull it across, and breathe. Find what feels good here. And then when you feel ready, you'll pull it back to center. Take your time. And then we're going to go around to the ground with the hips. So you're going to come into sort of like an upward dog position. Hands are underneath the shoulders. Bring the hips down to the ground. And then I find that it feels good to kind of rock back and forth. This is a really good stretch for the upper and lower abs. Big breath in here. And then we'll sit back into a child's pose and call it a day.